Remember when Saturday morning meant a trip to the sweet shop? When you'd press your nose against the glass counter, eyes wide at rows of colourful wrappers, clutching your pocket money like it was gold. There was something magical about those shops. The smell of sugar in the air, the lady behind the counter who knew your name, and the agonising choice of what to spend your few pence on. But here's the thing. So many of those sweets are gone. Not just forgotten, truly disappeared from the shelves forever. Today we're counting down 25 British sweets that vanished from our shops, and some of these you probably haven't thought about in decades. From the chocolate bars that defined your school lunch break to the boiled sweets your gran always had in her handbag. Let's take a trip back to the Britain that used to be. Number 25. Spangles. If you grew up in the 1950s or 60s, these were pocket money royalty. Launched by Mars in 1950, Spangles were boiled sweets in a distinctive rectangular tube, small, square, and impossibly shiny. They came in all sorts of flavours: orange, lime, blackcurrant, and the legendary Old English flavour, which tasted like something between honey and spiced fruit. At just a penny a tube, every child in Britain could afford them. Mars even produced mystery flavours. The packaging gave you no clue what was inside, and kids across the country would trade theories in the playground about what the new flavour might be. But by the early 1980s, tastes were changing. Boiled sweets felt old-fashioned next to the new wave of chocolate bars and chewy sweets flooding the market. Mars quietly discontinued Spangles in 1984. No announcement, no farewell. They just disappeared from the shelves one day. Collectors still pay good money for empty Spangles tubes today. That's how much Britain loved them. Number 24. Cadbury's Time Out. Now this one hurts. Launched in the early 1990s, Time Out was essentially a flake bar compressed into a proper chocolate wafer. A crispy, flaky centre wrapped in Cadbury's dairy milk. It was perfect. Light enough for a quick snack, chocolatey enough to satisfy the craving. And the name? Pure genius. A Time Out bar was exactly that, a little moment of escape in your day. You could find them everywhere. At the newsagent, in vending machines, even at the cinema. For over 2 decades, Time Out was a staple of the British chocolate shelf. Then, in 2017, Cadbury's New Zealand branch decided to discontinue it. But what really stung was that the UK version started disappearing too. Fans launched campaigns, flooded social media with pleas, but Cadbury remained silent. The bar simply vanished. And unlike some discontinued sweets that get brought back for limited runs, Time Out has stayed gone. Sometimes a Time Out is permanent and not by choice. Number 23. Milky Way Crispy Rolls. This was the snack you didn't know you needed until you tried one. A crispy wafer shell filled with creamy Milky Way filling, coated in milk chocolate. Simple? Yes, brilliant? Absolutely. Launched in the late 1990s, they were aimed at kids, but honestly, adults loved them just as much. There was something deeply satisfying about the crunch of that wafer giving way to the soft, sweet filling inside. They came in little twin packs, which meant you could either share with a friend or, let's be honest, eat both yourself. But Mars, who owned the Milky Way brand, never seemed to know what to do with crispy rolls. They were never given the marketing push of a Mars bar or a Snickers. They just sat there on the shelf, quietly brilliant, waiting to be discovered. And then one day, around 2007, they were gone. No press release, no farewell campaign, just an empty space on the shelf where they used to be. If you remember these, you remember something special. Number 22. Cadbury's Snowflake. Think of a flake bar, that crumbly, luxurious chocolate stick, but made from white chocolate. That was the Snowflake. Launched in 2000, it was Cadbury's attempt to capture the growing white chocolate market, and honestly, it worked beautifully. The texture was everything. That same satisfying crumble as a regular flake, but sweeter, creamier, with a vanilla hit that made it feel like a proper treat. It came in that distinctive purple wrapper with snowflake patterns, and it felt special. This wasn't an everyday chocolate bar. This was something you saved for a proper moment. Cadbury rebranded it as just Flake Snow in 2003, trying to tie it closer to the main Flake brand, but it didn't help. Sales were decent, but never matched the original Flake. By 2008, it was gone. White chocolate fans still mourn this one. It was proof that sometimes the best ideas don't survive simply because they're not the original. Number 21, the Aztec Bar. Now this one takes us way back. Launched by Cadbury in 1967, the Aztec was their answer to the Mars bar, a chocolate-covered bar with caramel, nougat, and a crunchy cereal base. It was named after the Aztec civilization, which was apparently a big trend in the late 1960s. The Aztec came in a bold bronze wrapper with an Aztec temple design, and it looked impressive on the shelf. The taste? Imagine a Mars bar, but with a distinctive crunch from that cereal layer. It was satisfying and filling, a proper man's chocolate bar, as the advertising liked to suggest. But here's the problem. The Mars bar was already king. The Aztec was always fighting a losing battle against a giant. Cadbury tried relaunching it in 1974 with new packaging, but it was too late. By 1978, the Aztec was gone, sacrificed to the very market battle it was created to fight. A brief, brave, and ultimately doomed chocolate warrior. Number 20, Rowntree's Cabana. This was a chocolate bar that refused to be ordinary. Made by Rowntree's in the 1970s and 80s, the Cabana was a curious mix. Milk chocolate filled with coconut, caramel and cherry pieces. Tropical flavours in a British chocolate bar. It was exotic, it was different, and it came in a wrapper covered in palm trees and tropical imagery. The taste divided people. Some loved the combination of chewy caramel with sweet coconut and those little hits of cherry. Others found it confusing. Why put tropical fruit in a chocolate bar? But that was the point. The Cabana was an escape. Every bite was supposed to transport you somewhere warmer. In an era when most British sweets played it safe, the Cabana dared to be different. Rowntree's discontinued it in the late 1980s as they streamlined their range. It never came back. Tropical Britain, it turns out, was just a fantasy after all. Number 19, Caramac. This is one of those sweets that you either loved or you genuinely didn't understand. Launched by Macintoshes in 1959, later part of Nestlé, Caramac was a caramel-flavoured bar that was, crucially, not actually caramel. It was a thin, creamy, pale yellow bar that tasted like caramelized sugar and condensed milk. No chew, no bite, just smooth, sweet, buttery flavour that melted on your tongue. It was the colour of butterscotch and it tasted like nothing else on the shelf. Your nan probably had one in her handbag. Your mum probably bought them at the checkout. They were comforting, familiar, and somehow always there. Nestlé kept Caramac going for over 60 years, an incredible run. But in 2023, they announced it was being discontinued. 64 years of buttery, golden history, gone. The reaction was enormous. Fans were heartbroken. Sometimes a sweet isn't just a sweet. It's a connection to everyone who ever handed you one with a cup of tea. Number 18, Rowntree's Secret. Now this bar lived up to its name. Launched in the 1990s, the Secret was a chocolate bar with a hidden centre. A soft, whipped mousse filling surrounded by thick milk chocolate. But here's what made it special. The mousse was different every time. Sometimes it was vanilla, sometimes chocolate, and for a while there was even a strawberry version. The whole concept was built around mystery and surprise. The advertising played on this too. What's your secret? The bar felt like a proper indulgence. That thick chocolate shell breaking to reveal the soft, airy mousse inside was a texture experience unlike anything else on the market. But Rowntree's, by then part of Nestlé, was consolidating its range in the early 2000s. The Secret was quietly discontinued around 2002. It never got the send-off it deserved. Perhaps that's fitting. A bar called Secret, disappearing without anyone really noticing. Number 17, Terry's Pyramid. This was chocolate as architecture, made by Terry's. The same people behind the chocolate orange. The pyramid was exactly what it sounded like, a pyramid-shaped chocolate with a mint filling. Launched in the 1980s, it looked like something from an Egyptian tomb exhibition. Dark chocolate on the outside, a smooth, cool peppermint fondant inside. It felt sophisticated, grown up, and just a little bit exotic. You'd find them in department stores and nice sweet shops, not the corner newsagent. The packaging was elegant too, gold and black with hieroglyphic-style patterns. This was a chocolate for people who wanted more than a quick sugar hit. But Terry's was acquired by Kraft Foods in 1993, and the pyramid didn't fit their mass-market strategy. It was discontinued in the mid-1990s. A chocolate pyramid crumbled to dust. Some say it was ahead of its time. Today's premium chocolate market would have loved it. Number 16. Cadbury's Bar 6. If you wanted a chocolate bar in the 1970s but didn't have much money, Bar 6 was your best friend. It was simple. 6 small fingers of Cadbury's milk chocolate joined together in a single row, wrapped in that cheerful orange wrapper. The beauty of Bar 6 was its no-nonsense approach. No caramel, no nougat, no fancy filling, just solid, creamy Cadbury's chocolate. And you could break off a finger at a time, which made it last longer, or you could share it with friends. At just a few pence, it was the bar kids bought with their dinner money. It was launched in the early 1970s as a budget-friendly option, and it sold brilliantly for years. But Cadbury's was always looking to innovate, and a simple chocolate finger bar didn't fit their modern vision. By the late 1980s, Bar 6 was phased out, replaced by flashier bars with fillings and layers. But sometimes, simple was better. Bar 6 proved that. Number 15. Trebor Penny Satins. These were the boiled sweets that lived in your gran's coat pocket. Small, smooth, oval-shaped sweets in shiny wrappers that looked like little pennies, hence the name. They came in a range of flavours: mint, toffee, fruit, and the ever-popular butterscotch. The texture was what made them special. They were boiled to that perfect point, not too hard, not too soft, with a silky, satiny finish on the outside that made them glide across your tongue. Trebor, based in Essex, was one of Britain's biggest sweet makers. Penny Satins were part of their backbone range. Not exciting, not trendy, but always there, always reliable. You'd find them at every post office counter and sweet shop in Britain. But as the 1990s rolled in, boiled sweets fell out of fashion. Trebor was acquired by Cadbury Schweppes, and the range was trimmed. Penny Satins didn't survive the cut. They vanished quietly in the late 1990s. Another piece of everyday British life, simply gone. Number 14. Cadbury's Wispa Gold. Now this one is particularly painful because it came back, and then it left again. Wispa Gold was a Wispa bar, but with a layer of golden caramel running through the bubbly chocolate. The original Wispa had been discontinued in 2003, causing such public outrage that Cadbury brought it back in 2007. But Wispa Gold, that was the luxury version. The caramel was rich and buttery, and combined with the aerated chocolate texture, it was like eating a chocolate cloud with a river of gold inside. Cadbury relaunched Wispa Gold in 2009 to huge excitement. Fans rejoiced. But here's the thing. They never committed to it permanently. It kept appearing as a limited edition, then disappearing, then coming back. It was the sweet that kept ghosting Britain. And eventually, around 2020, even the limited runs stopped. Right now, Wispa Gold is gone. A sweet that Britain loved, that Cadbury kept taking away and bringing back like some kind of chocolate tease. Number 13. Texan Bar. This was the chewiest chocolate bar in British history. Made by Nash's Caramel later under Rowntree's, the Texan Bar was a nougat and caramel centre covered in milk chocolate. But the thing everyone remembers is the chew. You'd bite into one and your jaw would get a proper workout. It was tough, satisfying, and it lasted ages, which was exactly the point. A Texan bar was value for money because you couldn't just wolf it down in 2 seconds. The branding was pure American Western. A cartoon cowboy, the name in bold frontier-style lettering, and the slogan, "Sure is a mighty chew." Launched in the 1970s, it built a loyal following. But by the late 1980s, Rowntree's was trimming its range and the Texan was put out to pasture. It was briefly relaunched in 2005 as a limited edition, and the internet nearly broke with excitement. But it disappeared again just as quickly. Sometimes you just can't go home again, partner. Number 12. Trebor Refreshers. Wait, refreshers still exist, right? Yes, the small ones do. But the ones that disappeared were the giant refreshers. These were the big, disc-shaped chewy sweets, about the size of a 2-pence coin, in roll tubes. They came in 4 fruit flavors: orange, lemon, lime, and raspberry. The flavor was sharp, fizzy, and absolutely mouth-watering. You'd pop one in and your whole mouth would tingle. Kids across Britain grew up on these. They were a lunchbox staple, a playground currency, and a comfort sweet all at once. The smaller refreshers, the little fizzy tablets, survived, but the big chewy ones were quietly discontinued in the 2000s as Trebor streamlined its range. Most people didn't even notice until they went looking for them. That's often how these things go. You don't realize something's gone until you reach for it and the shelf is empty. Number 11. Rowntree's Fudge. Now technically you can still find fudge bars in some places, but the original Rowntree's Fudge, the one that mattered, is gone. It was a simple bar of soft, creamy fudge covered in a thin layer of milk chocolate. The texture was gorgeous, soft, almost melting, with that distinctive fudge flavour that was sweet but not overwhelming. And it was cheap, very cheap. For decades, the fudge bar was one of the cheapest chocolate bars in Britain. School kids could buy 2 with their dinner money and still have change. The famous TV advert had a little boy singing, "A finger of fudge is just enough to give your kids a treat." That jingle is still stuck in the heads of an entire generation. But after Nestlé acquired Rowntree's, the bar was gradually pushed aside. It became harder to find, then nearly impossible. The original fudge, the proper one, is effectively gone. A treat for kids that grew up and moved on, apparently. Number 10. Mars Delight. Every now and then a chocolate bar comes along that seems too good to last. Mars Delight was one of those. Launched in 2004, it was a lighter, crispier version of the classic Mars bar, with wafer, caramel, and chocolate in a thinner, more elegant format. It was aimed at adults who wanted a chocolate treat without the heaviness of a full Mars bar. And people loved it. The texture was perfect. That snap of the wafer, the pull of the caramel, the smoothness of the chocolate. It felt grown up, but still indulgent. Ireland kept Mars Delight longer than the UK. It survived there until 2009. But the UK version was discontinued in 2007. The reasons were never entirely clear. Perhaps it cannibalized Mars bar sales, or perhaps it just didn't fit the brand's image. Whatever the truth, Mars Delight is gone, and Britain has been eating heavier chocolate bars ever since. Sometimes lighter isn't better for business, even when it's better for everyone else. Number 9. Cadbury's Dream. White chocolate has always divided Britain. You either love it or you think it's just sweet fat with no flavour. Cadbury's Dream, launched in 2001, was for the lovers. A solid bar of creamy Cadbury's white chocolate in a distinctive sky blue wrapper with clouds on it. It was sweet, yes, but it was also smooth and vanilla-rich, with that distinctive Cadbury's creaminess. It was aimed at a younger market. The packaging was fun, the name was aspirational, and the taste was unapologetically sweet. But white chocolate bars have always struggled in Britain. The market is small, and the Dream faced tough competition from Galaxy White and Milky Bar. Sales never matched Cadbury's expectations, and by 2007, it was discontinued. Cadbury has occasionally brought it back as Dream Snow for Christmas limited editions, but the original Dream Bar is gone. If you remember it, you remember a sweeter, simpler time. Literally. Number 8. Poppets. Poppets were the quiet hero of the British sweet shelf. Small, round, chocolate-coated sweets with a malted or toffee centre. They came in little cinema-style boxes. They were the sweet you ate at the pictures. Somehow they always tasted better in a dark cinema with a film playing. Payne's, who made them, were based in Croydon, and Poppets had been around since the 1930s. They survived wars, rationing, and decades of changing tastes. The malted version was the classic, that crunch of the chocolate shell giving way to the crumbly malt centre. But in the 2010s, Payne's ran into financial trouble. They were acquired and restructured, and Poppets were quietly dropped from production around 2020. Another British sweet that simply ran out of road. The cinema shelf feels emptier without them. And if you ever ate Poppets during a Saturday afternoon film, you'll know exactly what's been lost. Number 7. Fry's 5 Centres. This is perhaps the most beautiful chocolate bar Britain ever produced. Made by J.S. Fry, one of the oldest chocolate companies in the world, the 5 Centres was a plain chocolate bar divided into 5 segments, each containing a different fruit fondant centre: orange, lemon, raspberry, strawberry, and lime. Think of it as a chocolate box in a single bar. You could eat it segment by segment, choosing your flavour like picking a chocolate from a selection box. It was elegant, it was thoughtful, and it was utterly British. Fry's had been making chocolate since the 1700s, and this bar felt like it carried all that history. But after Cadbury acquired Fry's, the 5 Centres was eventually simplified to Fry's Chocolate Cream, just one flavour. The 5 Centres disappeared in the 1990s. 5 flavours, 5 colours, 5 little moments of joy. All gone. A loss that chocolate historians still weep over. Number 6. Cadbury's Tiffin. Tiffin was a chocolate bar that felt like a celebration. It was Cadbury's dairy milk packed with raisins and biscuit pieces. Essentially a fruit and nut bar, but chunkier, fruitier, and somehow more fun. The name comes from the British Indian word for a light meal, and the bar had that kind of informal anything-goes quality. Every bite was different. Sometimes you'd hit a pocket of raisins, sometimes a satisfying crunch of biscuit. It was unpredictable, and that was its charm. Cadbury launched it originally in the 1930s, and it came and went several times over the decades. Each return was greeted like an old friend coming home, but it never stayed permanently. The last proper run ended in the early 2000s. Cadbury occasionally brings it back for limited editions, but it's never a permanent fixture. A bar that could never quite commit to staying, just like the British weather, really. Number 5. Nestlé's Caramac. Yes, we mentioned Caramac earlier at 19, but the original Nestlé version deserves its own moment. This was the proper Caramac, the one made in the Halifax factory with that distinctive red and yellow wrapper. The recipe was slightly different from the later versions, richer, more buttery, with a deeper caramel note. Workers at the Halifax factory reportedly had their own stash. They knew how good it was because they made it every day. The original Caramac was launched in 1959 and ran for decades without any fuss or fanfare. It was just there. Reliable. Golden. Perfect. When production shifted and the recipe was subtly changed, purists noticed. The original had something the later versions didn't. Perhaps it was the milk, perhaps the technique, or perhaps it was simply the era. Some things can't be replicated, no matter how hard you try. The original Caramac is one of them. Number 4. Cadbury's Old Jamaica. This was chocolate for people who thought regular chocolate was too tame. Old Jamaica was a dark rum and raisin bar. Rich, dark chocolate studded with plump raisins and a kick of rum flavour that made you feel like a proper grown-up. It was launched in the 1960s and immediately found a niche. This wasn't a child's chocolate bar. This was something your dad kept in the sideboard for after dinner. The packaging was dark and distinguished, with a palm tree motif that hinted at the Caribbean. It felt imported, exotic, slightly dangerous. For decades, Old Jamaica had a devoted following, but dark chocolate with rum and raisin was never going to be a mass seller. Cadbury discontinued it, brought it back, discontinued it again. The last proper production run was around 2015. Dark chocolate lovers and rum enthusiasts have been mourning ever since. A taste of the Caribbean, lost to the British drizzle. Number 3. Marathon Bar. Americans know this as the Snickers bar. But for British people of a certain age, it will always be Marathon. Launched in the 1930s, the Marathon was Britain's go-to chocolate bar for decades. Nougat, caramel, peanuts, milk chocolate. A winning formula that sold in the millions. The name Marathon was part of British culture. You'd say, "I'm popping out for a marathon," and everyone knew what you meant. But in 1907, Mars decided to rebrand it as Snickers to align with the global name. Britain was furious. It felt like another piece of British identity being erased. The change was so unpopular that Mars actually brought the Marathon name back as a limited edition in 2020, and they sold out everywhere. People hoarded them. The Marathon isn't technically gone, it's just wearing a different name tag. But the name mattered. The name was part of the experience, and losing it felt like losing a friend to a foreign identity. Number 2. Opal Fruits. Made to make your mouth water. If you grew up in Britain before 1998, you knew this jingle by heart. Opal Fruits were chewy, fruity sweets in 4 flavours: strawberry, lemon, orange and lime. They were launched by Mars in 1960 and became an absolute national institution. Every cinema, every sweet shop, every corner newsagent had them. The texture was perfect, softer than other chewy sweets, with a real fruit flavour that made your mouth genuinely water. Then Mars made the decision that still stings. They rebranded them as Starburst to match the global name. Overnight, Opal Fruits were gone. The public was outraged. It was like renaming Big Ben. It just wasn't right. Mars brought the name back briefly in 2020 as a limited edition, and the country went mad for them. But it was only temporary. Opal Fruits are gone. Starburst are fine, but they're not Opal Fruits. The name was the magic, and we lost it. Number 1. Cadbury's Fuse. The most requested, most mourned, most missed chocolate bar in British history. Launched with massive fanfare on September 24, 1996, Cadbury called it Fuse Day and took out full-page newspaper ads, TV spots, the lot. The bar itself was unlike anything before, milk chocolate packed with raisins, peanuts, crisp cereal, fudge pieces, and hazelnut. Every bite was a different combination of textures and flavours. It was chaos in chocolate form, and Britain went absolutely mad for it. It sold 40 million bars in its first week. 40 million. That's nearly 1 bar for every household in the country. But here's the tragedy. After that explosive launch, sales gradually declined. The bar was too complex, too unpredictable. By 2006, Cadbury quietly discontinued it. The internet has been campaigning for its return ever since. Facebook groups, petitions, Twitter threads, all demanding the Fuse back. It never came back. The bar that exploded into British life and then faded away. The ultimate lost sweet. If this list had a heart, it would be shaped like a Fuse bar. And that's our list. 25 British sweets that disappeared from our shops. Some were taken from us by corporate decisions, others simply fell out of fashion, and a few were renamed into something that never felt quite right. But here's what I want you to think about. Every single one of these sweets represents a moment in someone's life. A Saturday morning with your mum, a treat after school, a birthday party, a packet of sweets from your nan. They're not just chocolate and sugar, they're memories. That's what's really been lost. So I want to ask you, which one did you miss the most? Drop a comment below and tell us your forgotten favourite. And if this trip down memory lane meant something to you, hit that subscribe button. Every week we explore more of the Britain that used to be. Until next time, keep the memories sweet.